Hello all, I am back, and this is that Halloween project quilt that I was talking about. Originally it was just supposed to be a wall hanging, and it still is, but as you can see it is a rather large wall hanging, and on top of it I still need to put the border on that will include these leaves. So those are 6 1/4 inches square, so I have to cut my fabric out for that border part. It's the same fabric as this one, so it should blend in pretty well. And then at the bottom in this area I'm gonna have applique kind of going across over here with pumpkins and leaves. And so this is very much like a Halloween kind of quilt for me. Also a little bit of fall, but honestly it's definitely a Halloween theme because of the colors. So I just bought some extra greens for leaves in case I need that. And then on top of it, I grabbed, it kind of just was like there, luckily. It's this really cute orange for the pumpkins, and it even has the batik, and it's even got these little moons and swirls in it. So I think that's perfect for the theme of this quilt. And then I'm still thinking about it, and I might cut it out just to see how it goes, but my sister had some Stonehenge that I was kind of keeping for her because I helped sew a top together for her bed, and it was all Stonehenge. And I might do one pumpkin, like an oblong squash pumpkin out of this, just for some texture besides just the orange one. So I'm going to cut it out and we'll see what it looks like once I get everything pieced, but this does have some of the blues in here, and it also has the orange here, and it's even got some of the greens that are in here, so it might work, it might not, we'll find out. So I gotta cut my pieces and start piecing these. They're about, the whole quilt so far is about 59 inches square, so I'm gonna cut out my 6 1/4 inch strips for these parts, piece them together, and then cut them all down to 59 inches, and then piece the side panels on first, and then also sew my leaves on to those other 59-inch strips that I cut, and then sew those on top for top and bottom just to get this completely thing. So once that's done, then I will be taking some pumpkin drawings and maybe kind of creating some of my own, and I'm hoping to, at least start drawing those on some fabric stabilizer that I have. That should hopefully be good for sewing on and then flipping it inside out and pressing it and then appliquing it on. So I have some of that, and we'll start drawing those shapes and hopefully getting some of these pumpkins cut out with some leaves just to start playing with the idea of where I want to place them. And that's kind of my goal for today because I got a late start and I had to do chores and all that good stuff. So without further ado, let's get these border pieces cut out. Even though this video is sped up, you can still tell that I am checking my counts twice at least before making that cut, because you can always cut more off, but you can't put it back on. So I'm just trying to make sure that I save as much fabric as possible and not make mistakes by accidentally cutting it too thick or too thin. And now that I have my strips cut out, I'm going to start pinning them together in order to sew on the line and get them all into one nice long strip. Here you can see I'm placing those strips perpendicular to each other because I'm going to sew a diagonal line on those instead of going straight across, just so it is a little bit more seamless once these pieces are all pieced together. Here I am setting up my machine and I'm sewing directly on the line, and please be smarter than me and have your needles pointing kind of towards you instead of away from you so you don't stick your fingers on them like I did. Once I finish sewing those strips together, I'm opening the seam up and pressing it flat, and then just making sure everything is nice and flat before I start cutting strips. So here I have already pinned my leaves onto part of my border, and now I'm just pinning on those side panels onto the quilt. Those are going to be sewn on first. I'm also going to sew those leaves onto my border strips, and then once those are complete and ironed, then I can pop my top and bottom borders with the leaves onto the quilt. So that's what we're going to do next. Now that I have finished pinning my strips onto the quilt, I am now sewing those leaves onto my border pieces really quick, and then moving on to the larger border sides. I finished sewing those strips onto my quilt and I ironed them, and now I'm pinning those top and bottom with the leaves onto the quilt and making sure those seams with the leaves match up really nicely with the side seams of the side borders. And here we are back at the sewing machine again, sewing those border strips on. Alright, so I have finished sewing on the borders, and as you can see, there's the leaves at the bottom. At the top, it's a little too big, so you can't see the leaves at the top yet until I get a better view of everything. So I still need to iron a few things here and there, but I need to go grocery shopping and finish baking bread. So it's gonna have to sit on the back burner for a little bit until I get back to it, but I'll try and iron those parts tonight and maybe start drawing up pumpkins and leaves and figuring out what size I want them. So that will be next. Here I am setting up to draw some pumpkins, and I didn't have very large paper, so I decided to fix that problem by taping a lot of pieces of paper together. And so here I'm drawing a large squat pumpkin. You can't see everything in the view just yet because I didn't have it very well orientated. But you can see I'm kind of practicing my leaves a little bit as well. They are not perfect. I am not an artist. I didn't even take art back in high school because you had to choose between band or art. And what did I choose? I chose band. So my leaves have much to be improved upon. The pumpkins are doing okay. I actually like the rustic look of the pumpkins. So the first one was that larger pumpkin, and then I'm planning to do a oblong squash, which might be that dark green fabric right here. And so it's kind of like a butternut squash shaped squash. And just drawing that out, I thought maybe I put ribs down the middle of it, but I actually didn't really like that, so I decided against that. And then I'm sketching some more leaves. I'm gonna be sketching more variety of leaves probably tomorrow, just to nail a few down before I start copying them with my photocopy machine and getting a bulk number of leaves that way that I can start placing on the fabric as I start figuring out my layout for these pumpkins. And that third pumpkin there is a nice kind of flat squat pumpkin. Now I just need to cut these out and start placing them, and that will wrap me up for the night, so I will show you my progress tomorrow. Okay, so actually fast forward about another week or so, so this is the next Sunday, and as you can see, I am just barely getting around to sketching some more leaves for this project. I actually decided to look at some pumpkins in real life to get an idea of what their leaves actually looked like for this project. So it's going to be half abstract and then half kind of real life leaves for the shapes and texture of this quilt. So I'm just finishing these up, and then I also decided to draw a little baby pumpkin or squash as well, just to kind of help add a little bit more texture. I might have them in that green fabric as well, and then I also might just draw a smaller round pumpkin to be orange once I finish placing everything. But This is where I'm at so far. I then took all these leaves and photocopied a lot of them to make extras, cut them all out, and we'll be placing them onto the quilt. Alright, so here you see me starting to place my leaves out. I've left the pumpkins in the areas that I thought they looked best in. I'm kind of going from a large to small height-wise standpoint, just kind of drawing your eye from the largest to the smallest. But working the leaves in where I can. I'm going to be having some vines behind all of this. I just don't have them cut out and placed yet because honestly, the paper vines will probably be a little bit unrealistic as to how the fabric is going to be worked or how it likes to bend. So I'm going to wait till I get my fabric strips cut out for that and then kind of work it underneath this area. So I'm placing these out. I'm going to have some areas where it kind of has like a nice trail and curl to these leaves, and then just kind of laying it out till it looks aesthetically pleasing to my eye. And once I have all my leaves placed out, I'll start taking those leaves and tracing them onto my interface fabric and then laying that onto my actual leaf fabric, sewing on those lines, cutting them out, and then flipping them inside out and pressing them, and then starting to lay this whole entire layout again and slowly sew and layer each of these leaves and pumpkins and cutting where I need to make sure that they're not super bulky once I get around to quilting this quilt. But here's the kind of final layout, and I will get back to you guys when I start appliquing. Thanks for watching.